Welcome to the CodeBreaker Mindset, where leaders share the unwritten rules for success. I'm your host, Chitra Nawbatt. Joining us today is Chris Boone, Group Vice President, Research Services at Oracle. Chris, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity. It's an honor to be here.
Chris, where does the healthcare business fit in Oracle's roughly $53 billion revenue pie?
Well, I mean, there's multiple ways to answer that question. I think, but the first thing, just from a financial perspective, I would say that the healthcare and life sciences business is roughly 10% of that number. So it's a pretty large business for Oracle. But I think the more important piece is how Larry sees it, which is why he made the investment in Cerner a few years ago, which was by far the largest acquisition Oracle has ever made. That's roughly $29 billion. And it was really his commitment to this vision that he thinks that Oracle could very much be a healthcare company in the future, like fully, right? And all that it could bring. And he's very, very committed to it and advancing the science of medicine, aging. He's doing a lot of work with clinical trials in the continent of Africa. So you can see this is a real thing, a real vision for him, and that he's been executing on. And he's brought in a lot of great talent to make that happen.
Talk about the product and services and how it's differentiated from the thousands of other health tech startups that are out there, and even Epic.
No, I think that the difference you'll find with Oracle, because it's Oracle Health and Life Sciences, so it's bridging those two worlds. There's no other company out there that's uniquely positioned to be able to do that. I mean, we have the EHR, we have very much some life sciences applications like clinical trial management software and others. And then you also have the services on top of it, which is the business I lead around research services that we can utilize. And I think the wonderful thing about it is that you took Cerner, which were very much experts in building EHR platforms, you combine it with a leading technology company that's going to utilize its Oracle tech stack, which is cloud, cybersecurity, all of those benefits to ensure that efficiency, that scale, and even that security of data, which has been a big thing for providers. But you also now layer in these analytical AI tech capabilities that we have that we've used in many other industries that we learned from, and you can apply to healthcare now. So I think you won't find another company that can do that. You find many of the startups that are pinpoint solutions. You find an Epic, which has been in the EHR space, that now has to sort of almost transform itself to be a digitally native or even a cloud-based platform. Oracle committed, and we announced last year at our Oracle Health Summit that we were going to reconstruct the entire EHR platform from the bottom up to make it cloud native. It's difficult to take a platform that's been used for decades and make it cloud native, right? And that was one of the key lessons I think we learned over the last couple of years in trying to re-engineer the Cerner platform.
Bring that to life for us in terms of talking about some of the key stakeholders and the outcomes you drive.
Yeah, I think that one of the key, it's interesting because I think that when I'm speaking to stakeholders externally, I can be talking to a med tech company, I could be talking to a pharma company, I could be talking to what is sort of we'll call it a research institute. We could be talking to AMCs or academic medical centers or providers, payers. I mean, it sort of covers, it's a 360 view on the industry. And I think that Oracle has positioned itself to be to create a connected ecosystem of all the different sectors and the ability to get data and insights from that. And that's great.
So talking about the word connected, how did you get connected to Oracle? Because your journey, you've been in healthcare data analytics for more than 25 years, maybe longer. Early days at Pfizer, AbbVie. You also have taught health information and analytics at NYU. So talk about how you got your path.
Yeah, well, I still teach. We got to be clear on that. So yeah, I'm still a professor at NYU. I love doing that. I'm an adjunct, so I fly up in the summertime to New York to teach my course. But I think I'll kind of start briefly from the beginning. I mean, I came into healthcare more because I wanted to be a CEO of a public hospital. That was my sort of goal. I think the key lesson that I learned is that path wasn't for me, and I realized that after several years, and I realized my talents were maximized in the data technology space. But the beautiful thing about it is it set me up to then go into a whole world of research, which is like the secondary use of that data that I never even fathomed that's been a career path. It's like all these things were sort of materialized with the sort of ubiquitous adoption of EHRs and then all the other digital tech that started coming out. I just happened to be at the American Heart Association where they were really pushing that from a clinical research perspective. And I think it opened up a lot for me. And then I chose to do a PhD in public affairs and health policy. And so it just sort of, it rounded out a lot of things. And I think all of it's been instrumental in my success thus far.
So talking about all of those ingredients and something you said earlier about Oracle and the transition that the company is going through, especially specifically the healthcare business, let's talk about the rules of the game. What's the top tailwind for the business? And what's the unwritten rule or rules that you're using to seize that opportunity?
The top tailwind for Oracle?
For the healthcare business.
For the healthcare business, I think is that...
For the healthcare business at Oracle.
Yeah, I got you. For the healthcare business at Oracle, I think our top tailwind is the technology stack that we're building this new platform on, and the ability to sort of, and the convergence that we have going on with the different applications that we have that are going to all be interconnected natively, right? And so we'll have, in this new EHR, you have the capability to identify patients, recruit them for clinical trials. That clinical trial module will be part of the EHR, and there's a seamless integration. Currently, if you think about it, you usually have to have these dual systems. You have this EHR and you have this clinical trial management system. So you find a lot of double entry on behalf of the providers in entering these systems. So, it's not really a play on interoperability, because interoperability to me is a system-to-system exchange, like an EHR to EHR. What we're talking about is changing the entire workflow of clinical care and clinical research. And which is a whole nother level of that. And then I think that this super exciting with the advanced analytics and AI capabilities we're building. That's just going to be going to make everyone so much smarter.
The barrier to profitable growth. What's the top barrier?
I think the barrier to profitable growth is going to be people don't typically. Well, so if you think about like health systems specifically, they don't tend to swap out EHRs as regularly. Right? And so, usually have a system. It's a significant investment for many of these health systems. They go through a lot of due diligence and a lot of stakeholders inside the organization that have to sign off on it. So usually they're pretty committed. So I think that what we're going to have to do is create a value proposition that's strong enough to sort of have them to be open to that particular conversation. But another piece of that too, though, is that that's really particularly focused on the U.S. market, right? But if you look at all the other countries around the world, many of them don't have the level of EHR adoption we have in the U.S. So Oracle is very committed to sort of international expansion too. And our teams have been doing a great job. We're represented in roughly 80% of UK hospitals. There's so many conversations happening in the Middle East and Asia and other places. So I think that the growth is sort of ex-US for us. But I think there's a lot to be gained in market share within the US as well.
But on that market share in the United States, let's go a little bit further, which is what's the hack? What is the unwritten rule, if you will, on how to penetrate? Because especially when it comes about nonprofit health systems, and you talked about it, in a prior life, I've had to sell into nonprofit systems. It is incredibly, it's the toughest constituent I've ever had to try to quote unquote sell into. Yeah. Is there an unwritten rule, a hack on how to?
I think the unwritten rule is to be unique. That's your differentiator, right? And for Oracle, we have to sort of pride ourselves on a one Oracle approach. You got to remember, so we have the HR, but there's ERP applications. There's so many other technology offerings that can easily be. You can create a one Oracle solution which could literally run the entire hospital from a digital tech perspective, right? And I think that for us, we're the only ones who can claim that legitimately, right? And I think that you'll see some of the fusion applications. Of course, you'll see the EHR. You'll see all of the other sort of adjacent applications that touch into those. But you can really get a full understanding of the business, the financial, the clinical impact of these technologies in your organization. I think that is where we're going to really be different. And then it's all going to be cloud-based. It's all going to be highly secured. It's going to have all the advanced AI capabilities one could have. So you'll get all the benefits of all these technologies in all these different applications in your entire business. So you're dealing with one source.
You talked about being unique. Is there a written rule, an unwritten rule that has served you continuously in terms of contributing to your success as a leader?
I think it's the same thing. I think it's knowing myself well enough, being highly self-aware, knowing what my strengths, my talents really are. I think that, I think knowing your talents and knowing how to position yourself accordingly. I always use this with my mentees. I tell them, I say, there are so many talented people in the world, but they play on the wrong team. And I say, you almost got to think of it like a professional athlete, right? When they're on one team, they're this phenomenal athlete. You're like, oh my gosh, this guy can't get any better. He gets traded or he leaves and goes to another team. He's like, this dude is terrible. What happened? Well, he was put in the wrong system. He's still the same player, but he's put in the wrong context, the wrong environment. He may not have the support from the leadership. He may not be playing the right position, or he or she may not be playing the right position. They may not have the right scheme. And the thing that I think that I've always been thoughtful about is I know myself, I know what I'm good at, I know what I need to surround myself to be even better at, and I know the content, the types of environments that I thrive the best in. And that's really, and you know what? I am not afraid to adjust and pivot as I need to, right? And I think that level of adaptability has served me well. That's how I've been able to go to all these different industries within the healthcare space generally, but and do pretty well.
You talked about the word pivot, so let's get into the pivots.
Yeah.
What's a significant business pivot that you've led?
A significant, well, I'm doing one right now, right? I mean, we're transforming what was a traditional, we'll say consulting and services-based organization into one that is a much more hybrid, data, tech-enabled, tech-driven services business, right? With a host of very smart subject matter experts, and it's going to be something that's very unique, I think, to the industry. We sort of, again, are uniquely positioned to do that. And I think that that's a pivot for the business. I think for me, personally, the pivot would have been from going from AbbVie to Oracle. Those are two very different environments, two different industries, right? But it's I think the more miraculous part of it is that leadership is leadership, right? And I know what I know. And so I chose the right team.
On the pivot on the business side, was that voluntary or involuntary? And going further, what were the signals? What was the signals or the pattern recognition where you and your colleagues were like, okay, we need to pivot this business in this direction? So was it more proactive, voluntary, or was it involuntary because of all the heated competition in the market and what the buyers were saying?
I think there were market pressures. I think you could start to see the conversations and dialogues of many of our customers and our clients changing, their needs evolving. So I think, if you look at all the customers that we have, all of their businesses are being disrupted and they're changing. Of course, it's going to force us to do something different, right? So I think, I think competition, sure, but I think from a competitive perspective, we're all in that same boat of trying to figure out what do we need to do now in this new paradigm, because it still hasn't settled yet. And so I think it's more the market pressures and what you see your customer evolving into.
Artificial intelligence is the new norm. Talk about top use case at scale where you're investing, level of that investment, if you can quantify, but level of that investment, top use case, and outcomes.
Yeah, I mean, I'll sort of look at it from two different perspectives. So on the health side, which is the EHR side, you're going to have those generative AI capabilities. They're going to be able to hopefully make most of the providers and clinicians much more efficient, right? And actually generating summaries and things and notes for from the structured and unstructured data for the provider real time, to where they're not combing through mounds and mounds of data. I think that's going to be a huge thing. Just that generative AI capability. We also have something called Clinical Digital Assistant, which is an ambient listening tool and it's sort of all in the spirit of reducing the amount of time that a clinician or a care provider has to be at an actual laptop or a computer or whatnot. And so I think those things are great for efficiencies for them. On the life sciences side, I think you're seeing a tremendous amount of reconstructing the way data is sort of unified. So you have, I lived in the pharma world and data was siloed by function. And it would really, and honestly, you can never really transform the business. Not that there was a lot of incentive to, because the revenue was still the same. But I think as drug discovery and development evolves, and it's a requirement because the current model is just too unsustainable, right? It takes too long, it's too expensive. I think those are going to be the market forces that drives, a sort of review. And you're going to say, okay, well, I have all this data. How can I be a smarter organization? How can I be much more targeted in the sort of molecules that I want to take through and sort of de-risk that process more? How can I accelerate and optimize clinical trials to where they are generating evidence that is sufficient, not just to the regulators, but also to many of the decision makers on the other side, whether it be payers and providers, patients, and so on and so forth. So I think the bigger use cases on the life sciences side are going to be in how we do discovery. This is primarily target identification and validation, how we optimize clinical trials, how we even commercialize and you launch drugs will be different, right? I just think and we saw this happening when I was at AbbVie too. We saw it was during the pandemic. So the engagement that we had, before we had these pharma reps or these medical science liaisons engaging with providers, they were like, "Why are you in my office? I don't want you in my office anymore." That interaction had evolved. They now wanted portals and different things like that. So I think that as you see that shift to much more digital tools becoming the norm, I think you're going to see more AI being applied and utilized in those cases too.
How does this impact to stakeholder experience?
I think so. Personally, what I would say that I love AI. By the way, let me be absolutely clear on that. The only thing, and I think it does make everyone more productive. And I was sharing this with a friend earlier today. I said, I think that one concern, if I had a concern, well, two concerns. I do worry about the ethics, right? Because in healthcare, it's different. It's a privacy issue. There's a lot going on that we have to consider. And we have to think about it as Oracle on a global scale. So all the countries, there's no harmonization of AI laws across the world, right? So that's something to consider. There's not even harmonization across in the US. It's like state by state. They're treating privacy and all these things very differently. I think that what I do get concerned about is the loss of human cognition. I do think we can go down this path of tool dependency, and generally, you think about it, we get smarter by studying, sort of almost like obtaining the information, retaining the information, and then applying it. With AI as sort of a tool, you don't have to obtain any information. It's being obtained and summarized and everything else for you, right? So, I think that if I had a concern, and that's just Chris, right? It may be more theoretical or philosophical in nature, but that is something that I do think about.
Let's get into the magic.
Yeah.
How do you define serendipity, and where has serendipity played a critical role in a business outcome?
I define serendipity as being at the right place at the right time with the right people, and I've had that happen many times in my career. I think from a business perspective, I think just looking at where Oracle and Oracle Health and Life Sciences is right now, this is a serendipitous moment. I mean, you don't find a situation where you have all the components to do something that's truly transformative to the industry. Everyone has claimed it. We truly do have all the key components to make it happen. And we just got to pull it all together and make that vision a reality. And no one, and even if someone had, let's just say, a fraction of the components that we have, they can't scale it on a global level the way we can, right? And so that's another unique advantage that I think that we have as a business. So I think, I think the time is now, and it's sort of our ball to not fumble, right? But I think for me personally, I feel like my entire career has been building up for this moment. I've been in many different environments, and I've worked with data and technology and public policy and all these things, like as you mentioned earlier. And so it sort of prepared me for the moment that I'm in right now, and to sort of lead this transformation and sort of hopefully work with the other leaders to usher us into a new era.
Chris, what's your advice on how to cultivate the CodeBreaker mindset?
My advice. I think, you will always hear me say self-awareness is key, right? I do think people don't spend it, and it sounds cliche, but I don't think people, and when I say self-awareness, I'm saying when you know thyself, you know your talents, you know your triggers, you know what you need to really succeed. I think as overachievers or talented people, we think we can thrive anywhere, and it's just not true. And we see it with professional athletes, as I mentioned earlier. So I think that knowing yourself and knowing where you thrive is the most important thing. And then you know how to surround yourself with people that complement you. And so I've always had this great talent of identifying talent, and especially complementary talent to myself, right? Because I know what I do. Well, I know what I do well, and I know things that I don't do as well, or that I don't like to do at all. And so usually surround yourself with people who are very passionate at those things, and it works. It works beautifully.
Chris, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for supporting the CodeBreaker Mindset. For more episodes, go to www.chitranawbatt.com to like and subscribe. Connect with me on social media at Chitra Nawbatt.